Okay, so we are now live, and I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining us for the AltDev Student Summit. We are pleased to present Dustin Clingman. Note that you may submit questions via the Google Moderator link at any time, and we'll address these during the Q&A at the end. So without further interruption, I'd like to turn it over to our presenter.
Thank you very much. I'm Dustin Clingman. I'm here to present a talk called Managing Up. I want to thank the fine folks who organized the AltDevConf Student Summit, and I'm really excited to participate. It's a little bit of an interesting topic to present at an event principally targeted at students, and I'll give you a basis for why I wanted to talk about this subject in just a couple of moments. Before we get started here, do the normal introductory stuff. Some of you probably read the very kind bio that I had it up on the blog, but I'm the chairman of the board of directors for the International Game Developers Association, which is an organization very near and dear to my heart. I'm also a lifetime member of the IGDA. I am the founder and CEO of a small game studio called First Five Games located in Orlando. And you can check out some of our cool games on that page. This is now coming up on my 14th year in the game industry, and I have an MBA from the School of Hard Knocks, which is one that costs a lot more than the kind that you can get at the normal universities. Okay, so the general gist of a talk like this for managing up is all built around the idea that we're already past, and we've left past the very difficult process of actually joining and landing a gig. Ultimately, that first part is going to be the hardest, but what you're going to find sooner or later is that keeping a job and building a career in this industry with the craziness that goes on from the stress or from crunch or from just general BS that is difficult to deal with is the second tier, and this talk is built around sort of conquering parts of that second tier. So there are other talks today and tomorrow about how to get in, and of course there's lots of great discussions on other subjects. But this is really about understanding, when you come in, what it's like to interact with a manager. And for some of you, this might be the first time you've actually had a job of this type where you spend a lot of time and energy in an office setting with politics and the like. Before I begin this slide, I'll actually also say that I've got a bit of time reserved at the end for QA, and so I'd be very excited and happy to address some specific questions that might come out of this, or other ones in general about pretty much anything. I'll answer questions about just about anything. Okay, so you've landed the job. I remember when I got my first job. I remember the first job that I had in the industry and how anxious I was to come into work, how excited I was going to be part of something bigger. But there was also this little corner in the back of my mind that was worried about what's it going to be like if I fail. I don't want to disappoint anyone. I want to make sure that I'm here, that I'm taken seriously, that I grow, that I learn, and that that I basically am part of the team and I'm actually contributing materially on the games that I'm working on. And that's the approach that I see a lot of students who come into positions, whether they come into my studio or they come into other jobs. It's also sometimes very difficult to know where you belong, and it's an interesting part of the interview process typically to evaluate a candidate on the basis of their cultural fit, right? Does this person seem like the kind of person we can spend 80 to 100 hours a week if we're forced to with, or are they going to drive us crazy? So just a bit of a word of optimism that if you've gotten the job, you've kind of made it past those hurdles. That said, the self-doubt is normally part of growing a career, and it's sometimes hard to know where you belong, especially when you're joining a project and you're coming on in the late stages or the middle stages of a project. Maybe you're replacing people who have departed earlier, or you're essentially bolstering the troops at the end as a major content push is needed to kind of get the game finished right towards the end of ship. So that can make it a little bit weird when you're coming into a situation to try to understand where you belong. So a few things to keep in mind. Like I said, well, they hired you, and one of the things that junior junior folks that I talk to and that I work with on a daily basis, I try to remind them that your continued employment is the best example of how I regard you. The game industry is not in any way, shape, or form against cutting people loose very quickly if they really don't think they can hang. So, if you've got the job, you haven't screwed anything up badly if you're still employed. So make sure you kind of keep that in mind. If you're still there, that means something. The other thing to kind of keep in mind is, and it's probably not hard to imagine, that when you come into an existing studio, there's a lot of emotional baggage that propagates through, and you'll find, depending on the size of the studio that you're working with, you'll have folks that have been there for 10 years, you'll have folks that have been there for 2 years, you'll have folks that are brand new and start the same day that you do. And the people who have been around for 10 years tend to be in the more senior leadership positions in the company, and they also have been there for every major cluster bomb that's ever gone off in that studio. Essentially, if it was great, they were there for it and they remember it. If it was terrible, well, they double remember that. And it's something that you're going to have to slowly but surely become cognizant of and aware of. You're never going to have been in those fights with those people while they were digging deep to achieve their goals, but it happens a lot. Every company has that baggage, and it's something that's important. And as I say here in the slide, it's something. Usually there's enough that you can actually generate a few screenplays around. So keep that in mind, as that you're coming into a group that already has ties and linkages, and you're looking to find an optimum spot where you can contribute effectively. That said, operating in a junior capacity, nobody expects you to move mountains, right? In fact, their expectations of you are extremely managed. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, but the fact that their expectations for you are low is actually a very, very important thing, because it gives you a grand opportunity to just blow those expectations out of the water and to demonstrate yourself as a very valuable and important part of the team. And then lastly, one of the things that I also caution people around is the idea that you really need to give it time, right? This is a career, right? Something that you plan that you're going to be doing for 10, 15, 20, maybe 30 years, maybe longer. Be patient with yourself. Your senior developers and the other folks that you work with on your team already know to be patient with you. So make sure that you also reflect on that wisdom and that you apply it as well. This comment here that I have about not getting too familiar with people too quickly is something that's probably worth a couple of moments discussion about. It's very exciting to come into an environment where everyone likes the same kind of stuff that you do. Everyone talks about the kinds of subjects that you talk about very deeply. They care about the games that they're working on. They care about the games that other people are working on. And you just feel like you've kind of come home to the place where you always had wished that you were. That said, it's really critical for you not to put yourself in a position where you become too familiar with people too quickly. And what I mean by that is, and to give you an example of places where students frequently make mistakes on this, they will get way too have a very different expectation of a relationship just because we're having a great and wonderful conversation, right? I just met you. We're not friends. You could be gone in a month if you don't perform. I don't want to get attached to you in that way right away until some other things kind of happen. If you push that, you might find yourself actually getting shoved back in some ways by the people involved. Take your time, get to know these people, and frankly, really focus on your work and demonstrating value, and you won't have to worry about those types of things. So the title of my talk is managing up. And I wanted to talk a little bit about exactly what managing up means, and essentially, managing up is about interacting with your boss, understanding what your boss's weaknesses are, and then modifying and extending the kinds of things that you do as a resource in a team to basically overcome those weaknesses to the benefit of your team, but more importantly, to the benefit of your boss. And it's about really managing those expectations and understanding how to excel and to be seen as a valuable asset within a company. The smaller the company, the more important this is. In a big company, if you're at a big publisher, an EA or Ubisoft, there's huge org chart and lots of different ties, and so there are local kind of flare-ups and issues that happen from a political standpoint. But in a small company, if you come into a company where there's 10 to 25 people, understanding this is going to actually make you a much more valuable player in a much shorter period of time and give you the access to do some of the things that you probably dreamed about doing before you got the job. So I want to clear up a couple of misconceptions, and I know that some 450 people registered for today's presentations, which is pretty awesome. And so some of these things you might already know, so please just sort of take that in stride. But while the game industry is an amazing place, it's a job. And once you get in, there's going to be times and reasons that are very good and worthwhile for you to frankly hate your job for a while. It's just the way it goes, and frankly, being involved in game development is a love affair. It's a torrid love affair, and it's very painful sometimes. It's also very beautiful and wonderful sometimes. But when it's bad, it's real bad, and when it's great, it's really great. And then there's all the other times, right? You guys know that we don't just sit around playing games, although sometimes we do sort of cheat on that. And really, with my comments about this industry being a torrid love affair, I would certainly not ever trade my career and job for the world, because it's the place that I belong in. So why is this talk even necessary? Well, the truth is, and some of you may have followed or seen in some of the reports of the IGDA's Quality of Life Special Interest Groups white paper that's actually quite a number of years old. But one of the things that white paper demonstrated was that the typical life expectancy of a career in the game industry was just about 5 years. Well, why is that? Well, the industry puts people under an incredible amount of stress to perform. It's a very hit-driven industry, a place where people need to succeed or fail in a very fast way. Companies, come out of nowhere, fall back to the ground. Big companies crash to the ground in a short period of time. So it's a pretty interesting battlefield. And essentially what that means is when the guy who used to be your 10-year veteran decides that he's had enough and he leaves, and you turn around and you look behind him at who's left, it turns out that who's left is maybe the people with 3 and 4 years experience. And those people have demonstrated their worthiness and their trustworthiness and their ability. They might not be the equivalent of a 10-year veteran. In fact, let's be honest, they're not. But they often get the nod to sort of bump up ahead in the leadership kind of opportunity. So, you might find when you come into a studio that, the person that you're working with might only have 5-6 years experience in the game industry, let alone in a role in terms of management. And so effectively what this means is that the vast majority of the developers who are in lead positions or in manager positions, they are not managers professionally. They're developers who have just been doing things longer than, say, someone like yourself. So they don't have or work to obtain managerial training. Now, that's a big generalization that's really not very fair. There are some studios that spend a lot of time and energy in trying to cultivate good leadership. They do that through seminars, but fundamentally, if you take somebody who's a programmer and tell them, hey, now you're going to be a manager, that's going to be regarded in one or two ways, right? They're either going to be very upset about it or try to do as little of it as possible so they can continue coding, or maybe they're going to fall into it and love it. I don't know, but fundamentally, they don't usually have the managerial training that you would expect in other industries. So that lack of training essentially creates a lot of potential problems for people who are underneath them. They might not have necessarily the best communication skills. They might not be an aspirational or a coach figure who's trying to cultivate some type of leadership and to sort of help you progress in your career or the team to progress against a specific goal. That's sort of par for the course, and it's important for you to expect a wide range of competencies, not just in the core capability of an individual in a leadership position, but also in their ability to communicate and their ability to see themselves as a leader and then perform as a leader. When you get around the corner on it and you start to look at them as humans and people who are just ahead of you sort of in the career curve, you can kind of have some sympathy for their position, but fundamentally, that's why this talk is necessary, because managerial structures are very Wild West, and whatever goes goes. And big studios and big companies are different than this, right? But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily better, nor does it mean that the folks who are promoted are ready to take that responsibility or have a qualification beyond it that extends beyond the fact that they've been here the longest in this capacity. So what is it that we hope to achieve? Well, I want to focus on a few of the key employee skills, because what you find through my talk is that actually it has a lot more to do with you as an individual than it necessarily has to do with your lead or your manager. I want to give a little bit of clarity on a manager's job and responsibilities to sort of help folks coming into the industry understand the roles better, and then sort of provide a few specific examples of how to effectively manage up, and then I'll have a little bit of time left over for QA. Okay, so what are these key skills for a new employee? They're kind of vague, but I've got slides for each one of them. There's listening, there's observation, there's communication, there's learning the power of criticism, how to give and how to take it. There's knowledge of how to apologize properly if necessary, and the magic bullet trick, which is itself pretty awesome. Okay, so speaking expressly from the position of a brand new hire or a junior developer, it should be your mantra to do more listening than to do talking. And the reason why is because people say and will tell you an amazing amount of things about your situation, about the company, about their expertise, just by giving them the ability to talk. And this is a skill that actually is pretty critical. It seems maybe a little bit contrived to say, sure, of course I should listen, but the reality is that this isn't just about listening. This is actually about developing the skill to understand when important information is being communicated. And that important information that's being communicated, extends beyond the words of what's being said, right? I'm talking about actually understanding and intuiting the emotion and the intent of the words themselves, right? Some 65 to 70% of communication is nonverbal. And when you're in an office environment and someone comes, just by changing their body language, they can completely change the meaning of the words. They can take something that's a joke and actually turn it into, frankly, for lack of a better word, a threat just by their body language. So it's a skill that's designed to allow you to better understand the input that's coming in. And you could think about it as basically being sort of an amazing vacuum cleaner of knowledge and information, not just for the things that you want to remember about your core discipline, but also for your broader career and for your understanding of where things are going inside of the company. So listening is about the nonverbal communication, about the emotion, as well as about the core words that are involved. Observation, also very important. Being able to understand and see and notice the stress levels of the folks that you're working on are pretty critical skills to have, right? Especially when you see them in yourself. Understanding if the energy around your core group is positive or negative is very important. That's the kind of thing that a manager needs to be aware of. And being able to understand if the vibe is good or the vibe is bad on the whole is pretty valuable. It's also important for you to take a look and see how the management interacts with employees. And I think that one of the things that I do that's a very, very important distinction for me is that I interact with a lot of other CEOs of studios, and most of them talk about my employees in the possessive, right? This person works for me. This person works for me. You want to try to find people who work with their employees, and that's something that's a key distinction for me as a leader. I work with the people in my studio. None of them work for me, right? If they all get up and walk out, I'm kind of screwed. And it's the attitude that it's attitudes like that that make people loyal and make them stick out through the tough times. So understanding how the management interacts with employees is important, not just so that you can decide if it's a great place to work, but really so that you can understand and build a game plan around how the information that's coming to you should be, received and then acted upon. And then there's communication, and I'm imagining the folks that are listening thinking, wow, we've had this class already, but it just cannot be reiterated enough, right? The communication is the one true key to greatness. It's the thing that really separates great leaders from just good or marginal folks. And this is the place where all of your skill points should get dumped. Any skill point that you've got that doesn't go into your core discipline should go into communication, right? It's really important to understand this both on the verbal and in written form. So how you talk to people, the things you say, the words you choose, the things you don't say, how your body language communicates those things as well. It's not bad to obsess over that just a little bit. I mean, if you obsess over your body language, that's going to be kind of awkward. So I would encourage you to maybe not do that in the office as much, but your verbal communication is critical, right? Those are the words that you're writing down, and you can't really take them back once you've chosen to send them. It's okay to obsess about and take some time, and not sort of fall prey to short tempers or other distractions that just make you feel like you want to lash out at somebody. And it's interesting that Abraham Lincoln used to write letters to his generals during the Civil War who were frustrating him, and routinely he would write and draft the letter and then take it and put it into a desk drawer and leave it until the next day. And what he found was, after all was said and done, he would write the angry letters so that he could get his thoughts out, and he never sent them. And I think that there's some wisdom in that to sort of understand that the words that we use and the things that we say are really important, and so they should be carefully chosen. The other thing that a lot of devs skimp on is their presentation abilities, and so this is something that's really critical because attending a GDC or being at a conference like the one we're at right now, being a presenter in a place like this is really important. It's a way to sort of demonstrate your passion for your craft, but also for you to learn from others. And it's also great when you can go to an event for free because you've got a speaker badge, right? So cultivating your presenting skills is not just good for what it can do later, but it's great because it makes you, it changes your arsenal and gives you a new founded area to benefit from. And then criticism. Wow, so this is, I could talk forever about this. I'm going to probably be kind of short on it, but generally speaking, this is the weakest new employee trait, right? This is the place where people are the softest and the squishiest. Students and new employees either are very bad at delivering or very bad at receiving criticism, and this is something that I've seen countless times. So I feel pretty good about saying this. And of course, it's not going to be an absolute, and it is a bit of a generalization, but it is something worth saying. I'll reiterate again that you were originally hired for a reason, and that's something that you have to focus on. Don't be a jerk, but do your best to help the project, and don't take criticism personally. That's a huge unprofessional move. When you do that and you storm out of a room, especially when the criticism is being provided to you in a constructed fashion, and your emotions overtake you, and that is the impression that people are left with, that's a big professional setback, because now you've established that you're difficult to approach. And when people want to give you feedback or they want to say something to you to help you, they're always going to have that tinge: is this person going to blow up on me? Is that person going to be able to handle what I'm saying? If you get into a situation where it's clear that you cannot handle criticism, you're going to get drummed out of the business. There's no way around this. No amount of ego or loud or boisterous behavior is going to keep you ahead of getting the axe when you become a person who fundamentally can't take and grow from the criticism. And then this one, how to properly apologize, right? And so this might seem really wacky to have a slide in here about this, but it's something that's also a weak skill. You're going to make mistakes, and you're going to potentially make your boss look bad from time to time. And I would encourage you to make those in the fewest numbers as possible, but you might find that you do it a few times. There is a proper way to apologize, and the proper way to apologize is to acknowledge your mistake directly. I recognize that I did X, Y, and Z. Acknowledge your intended course correction. Understanding now that this is incorrect, or understanding that I could have handled this a different way. In the future, I will do, P, D, and Q. Don't allow yourself to slip into the fake faux apology, right? And the fake faux apology is the, well, I'm sorry if you felt that way. I'm sorry if you feel bad about that, right? That is not an apology, right? That's in fact another smack in the face. That's an insult on top of, because it's not only a bad apology, but it's, I'm sorry you felt that way, is not an admission or acknowledgement that you made a mistake, right? So make sure that you focus on and key on the words "I apologize" delivered with eye contact, preferably in a face-to-face kind of fashion, and you'll be in a position where people will respect you. Apologizing effectively is a critical skill when you're dealing with somebody who's in a leadership role with you. And then I mentioned the magic bullet trick. And this is kind of funny because the magic bullet trick is a trick about dodging praise so that it can hit your boss, which is kind of neat. It's sort of like bullet time, only it's the praise bullet that you think you probably should get shot with, but yet you get out of the way and you let your boss get hit with it. It's also about taking the blame bullet. And it's an important thing to understand that the relationship that you have with your lead is important. You're there to actually enhance their work so that they can actually make your job better and easier. And the reason why we do this is because working in the game industry is a job, and there are times when you need to protect your boss, and then there's times when your boss needs to protect you. And we'll see a little bit more about this kind of stuff in just a few minutes. Couple side notes and additional skills here. It's really a key thing for you to seek out a mentor in the company. You might have a mentor from school. You might have had somebody who actually was a direct advisor to you during your curriculum. But it's a really good idea to try to find a mentor in the company that you work with, because odds are they're going to have history, they're going to have knowledge, and they're going to have a lot of additional information that ultimately will be able to help you out on your journey. Enroll your coworkers in your future, right? It's not a really good idea to talk about what it's going to be like when you're working at Blizzard, unless you're working at Blizzard. But make sure people know what it is that you want to do professionally. Don't worry about franchises and brands and IPs that you think are critical, that are things you would like to be associated with. Talk to them about your skill set, and make sure that your coworkers, and especially your boss or your lead, knows what it is that you'd like to accomplish. Maybe you don't know, but it's going to become clearer for you once you've spent a little bit of time in the industry. So make sure that you tell people what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Do you want to be an engine programmer? Do you want to be a network programmer? Right? Do you want to be an animator? Just dump all of the I want to work at Pixar, BioWare, Square. Just don't talk about the other places that you want to work, because it's just sort of an understood thing that everybody would love to be working on the next great, amazing, awesome, cool thing. But here we are, and this is the job that we've got to focus on today. And get in the habit of double, triple, quadruple checking anything before you give information about the situation to a manager or lead. If you don't, you'll end up going back to my apology slide, and you just want to make sure that if you give information, especially as a junior, if your boss runs with that and uses that as the basis, and of course there's an argument to be made about why the boss shouldn't take the advice from the junior person, but the circumstances are so wide and varied that there's no way to know for sure what could cause us to be in that situation, and it just might be the one time when the cosmos has aligned and you're the person to give the critical piece of information. Make sure that you've got it right. It's okay to say, I don't know, and then to get out of the way. But if you're actually going to choose to step up and provide the number 42 as the answer, make sure that it is. And of course, we all know that it is. All right, so shifting gears here, what exactly does a manager do? And when I talk about manager, I abstract it here because the form it shows up in, in the game industry as a studio, as a producer perhaps, as a discipline lead, a programming lead, art director, creative director, any of those are all managers, but it's kind of neat. So I dug around a little bit and pulled up this really nifty project management because I thought it was the most directly appropriate and applicable to the kind of folks that we have, that'll probably be listening to this talk. So, you guys have seen this meme, what my friends think I do, what I actually do. And I thought this was pretty good, right? Because, your friends think that your friends think that you stand up in front of people and be bossy, and your mom thinks you make a lot of money, and society thinks you're a fat cat. Your boss thinks you make Gantt charts, kick, dance. You think, as the manager, that you just basically exercise a time division multiplexing algorithm and grow like a lot of extra arms to be able to do things. But what you actually do is basically sit around miserable, trying to herd cats and trying to get everybody on the same page. And it's a lot of stress, and it's a lot of trouble and hassle. And sometimes you really wonder why you're doing it. I thought this cartoon was also kind of interesting because you've all heard about cat herding, and I just thought it was funny that the effective cat herder the shepherd, actually had this nice bubble here where he thought he'd rather manage a large software development project than herd cats, but in effect they are indeed the same things, right? So what are the key manager responsibilities? Well, of course, the managers, and in this case, maybe I'm going to shift to lead/producer, right? Their job is to really make sure that they know what the team status is. Where are we on X? Where are we on Y? And the variations of those pieces kind of bolster up depending on which discipline that you're working with. They're also supposed to make sure that they provide information back so that they keep the team working in the right direction. That's super awesome and cool. They communicate with all the other departments as well as a producer to ensure some type of harmony. They protect the team and the schedule, and typically they also try to mentor, advise, and provide additional opportunities for growth within their team. That's what a good manager does, and that's the kind of thing that when you work with people like this, you'll find that you want to stick around. Best compliment that you can be paid, in my opinion, in the game industry is for folks to want to stick around. Because when games finish, that's when your stock probably is the highest, especially when you're in a situation where you just shipped a great game, it's got an awesome Metacritic, sales are high, people are excited, and now you're the person who worked on that game. And you would have an opportunity to perhaps earn a little bit more money and perhaps gain even a little bit more responsibility if you shifted gears. But if you find a very good situation and setting, you should stick with it, actually. You should actually find a way to stay with the people who you can trust, because even if you're not necessarily working on a AAA title, you want to make sure that you're actually working with people who are competent and that you can trust, and that's actually more important and more responsible. Have you ever had a bad manager? And have you ever maybe you've been a bad manager? I've been a bad manager before. What causes somebody to sort of end up in that kind of situation, right? Did they actually enjoy that job? Did they stay in it very long? How much damage did they do to the team or the project, right? It turns out, actually, that, as I mentioned earlier, that most of the leads in the game industry came from the seat that you're sitting in right now. And they don't have the prior training. They're just winging it, and they're just trying to, or they're just a bit better than you at the job. The other thing that happens is that this is just sort of this wacky kind of circular problem that we have where, it's likely that the leads that are in the position that they're in now had poor managers, and they don't know how to improve, nor do they know what exactly it is that they're doing wrong. I'm not quite sure how we make things better if we don't get past that or make a leap past it, and that's kind of important. So what can you do? And I'll pause here actually for a moment. I'll jump back a slide here. I'll pause for a second here to say and kind of point out a couple of important reasons. Right, the reason to give students a talk like this a talk that already assumes that you've got the job, that you've graduated, got the job, that you're in the industry. For some of you, that might be 4 years away. Some of you, it might be next month you graduate and you're out looking for a job, and I'll see you at GDC. You guys are the seed corn for the future of the industry. And that's a pretty important thing to keep in mind. It's the reason why a lot of the folks who are giving presentations in this conference today and tomorrow are taking the time to speak back to students. There's things we've done, there's things we've learned, and you guys are supposed to help us fix this thing, right? Because frankly, in a lot of ways, we're failing you because we're not setting you up with a situation that's ideal for you to come into. And with that said, you guys need to start thinking about this now, as opposed to us who thought about it long after we had stood up, looked around, and said, "Wow, something's not right. Maybe we shouldn't have to crunch 100 hours every time we work on a milestone." And so I won't apologize for the industry as it is, because it was like that when I got here too. And I'm trying to make it a little bit better, and small steps like this hopefully will make a difference. So, I would encourage you not to necessarily judge folks for not necessarily being tight or strong managers, but to actually have a little bit of compassion for them and to try to understand. And the key part of managing up is what your role is in the process. How do you actually help this be better? Well, one thing that you can do is actually think about your lead as a client. And if you've ever done a contract job for somebody, or ever worked for a short period of time, or done any kind of work for somebody, you've got a client. They don't always engage you, but they expect you to do an outstanding job, and they have a choice to go work with someone else if they don't. When you actually put yourself in the mindset of your boss as a client, it actually shifts the way you think about your work in a very, very profound way. You start to think about being excellent because there are other people who come right behind you and could take your client, right? And it's interesting, right? And it keeps you from getting complacent, and that's pretty key. If you feel like you can handle it, volunteer for a task that comes open, and that even if you're a junior, right? A lot of times, the junior designers, junior developers want to sort of stay back and let the more experienced people. Don't sit back, right? If you think you can handle a task, even if it looks like it's big, go for it, because that's going to be it's going to have high comedic value for the rest of the dev team, and it's going to be major, epic win for you if you actually pull it off. Remember that at any point in time, your goal is to exceed your target deliverables in a way that makes your manager's work and makes your manager's job easier. When you do this, you start to become a super valuable asset, and it's important, especially for those of you who are closer to graduation, to keep in mind that you're watching the things that are happening, and you watch the news, and you see about the studio closures, and you see about the things that are going on around you and in your industry. It's a time of heavy disruption. You need to be seen as a valuable asset. It's a great way to keep your job. A very, very smart person a long time ago told me, when you get into a new company, you need to learn how they keep score, and then you need to score as much as you can. And with your situation and the discipline that you're working in, finding out how your boss keeps track of things and making sure that you're racking up as many points as you can is a pretty key thing to sticking around when it comes time to levying the swinging the axe and having to cut people loose. Your real goal is to try to make yourself too valuable to lose. I mean, you want to continue to get valuable experience on a job. You want to be seen as an important part of the team, and you want to stick around in the event that something goes wrong and be seen as a valuable asset. Even if you still get let go in one of those situations, the mind shift and the perspective that you approach it from will have a big impact on your next job. So I thought about, and I was trying to come up with some ideas on a discipline-by-discipline basis. And there are a couple of disciplines that are not listed here, notoriously sound and narrative. So my apologies. I'll be happy to provide examples for sound and narrative if someone would like them. But I thought, some of the key disciplines that I would provide a few examples of what I thought was effective managing up. And starting off first with programmers, I'm a programming background, and so while it's not something that I do, it's something that I deal with all the time, right? When you come into a new situation, go out of your way to learn the coding standard and adhere to it. If there's not one, you might try to seek out one of the other senior engineers and see if you can help them develop one. If there is one, try to nicely encourage the other folks that are working with you to stick with it. Invest your own time into trying pet projects rather than overbuilding the core task you have. I don't know how many times I've worked with people who get locked on to a certain technique or idea that they want to try, or an algorithm that they read out of the art of computer programming, and they just cannot wait to implement this random number generator, and it's not really applicable. They just want to overbuild something for the sake of the experience of overbuilding it. You really want to do that overbuilding on your own time and in your own projects, right? Your boss should know you as an efficient, quick, and stick to it type of engineer, and somebody who doesn't just sort of bloat the code for their own education. Don't do that. And programmers tend to be pretty analytical and try to focus on things. Understand the power of nonverbal communication, right? I mean, I've worked with a lot of very, very savvy engineers who are really smart, have a lot of good interpersonal skills, and then there's a lot of other people who are the exact opposite spectrum, right? Either way, learning to play poker and actually focusing on physical tells as communication through nonverbal communication is actually a really good skill for programmers to have. In fact, it's a good skill for everybody to have, to help them better understand the situation and kind of understand around what's going on. You'll be able to understand what's going on with your boss from a nonverbal standpoint, if you're actually starting to pay attention and observing those types of things. Examples for artists and animators, right? You come into a studio, they've got an amazing AD. She used to work at Pixar. Oh my gosh, they've made movies that define your childhood. It's so great to be there and to working with them, right? I'm gonna skip the order here. You want to try to resist overdoing trying to construct a teacher-student relationship with your AD, especially when you're brand new. If you've got a lot of respect for them, it's totally cool to say, hey, I really respect the body of work that you've done. It's much better for you to try to learn from them through the project than to try to kind of create a situation where you're trying to twist their arm into mentoring you as a junior person, right? They probably don't have time, and if they do have time, guess what? You're going to know about it, right? I've worked with some great ADs, and they had 3 or 4 kind of student relationships with junior people in studio. They loved it. They made time for it. Everyone was cool with it, and everybody got to grow from it. Well, not everybody's like that, right? So just don't assume that that's going to be part of your relationship. But do assume that you have the ability to ask questions about the style guide, right? If you're working with something or it's coming down from on high and you've just been basically given this guide as a basis to work from, feel free to talk to your lead about how those decisions come down. That makes it clear to them that you care about those choices and that you want to understand the power of those choices. Understanding how the power of one of them can actually help you unlock some of the other ones. So I think it's a key part of actually communicating that you're serious about your craft, to ask those types of questions. And the thing that it really depends on the size of the studio. For my last comment here about source control, it's not something. Well, I should rephrase that. It's not something that I've seen a lot of artists embrace, the idea of keeping track of source control. If you happen to work in a school that has a capability to do that, and you are an artist and you have basically understood and learned the value of source control, then you're awesome, and you're better than like 90% of the people that I came up into the industry with. If you're not using it, go figure it out, right? I mean, go find out and understand the value of it. You lose a day or two's worth of work because you're not keeping track and you're not checking in your stuff. You're going to have some very angry people, and they're going to be very rightfully angry at you. Examples for designers, always volunteer to make the prototype. So if you're in a studio like mine, First 5, we're very, very big on prototyping. Prototype. Be the person to jump in and say, hey, I'll build the prototype. If it's understood what it is, go ahead and do so. That takes the load off of somebody else, gets you the experience doing it, and it also is an opportunity for you to demonstrate the ability to take in some cases nonverbal or written instructions and actually take them off the paper and build them into something interesting. Very valuable, very valuable. Learn how to prove your system designs in Excel, right? I mean, you can simulate and do some extremely powerful testing and random number generation and conflict and battle testing inside of Excel. It's a really, really key thing. You do this, you can give your lead some very powerful information to go back and handle the balancing argument when they have to go back and talk to the producers, and everybody has to make some decisions about whether or not to nerf this thing or that thing. If you can actually test system designs in Excel, you've got a lot of power to offer. And I also encourage you to really become part of your design culture, right? Invite people to an informal design chat with folks during lunch. Invite your lead. Try to build sort of a culture of communication. You become the glue of culture when you do that. And it's a great opportunity for you to learn it, especially from your lead, because remember that the leads are people who previously did your job and in some cases might still be doing your job in addition to having this management thread. So trying to kind of create opportunities for you to discuss, learn, and understand about them is a really great opportunity. QA, beat your quota like a rented mule, and that's a great one. It's a lot of times in QA, especially in well-formulated systems, you're going to have quotas that you need to make, and they're expected. How many? We know how many bugs we estimate to be this year. Here's your quota for this week. Beat your quota like a rented mule. There's nothing says I'm awesome than consistently standing out with excellent work. It's something that's really key, and it's something that makes a big difference. Make sure that your reports are really accurate, right? Double, triple, quadruple check. Think about what you're doing. Don't just throw stuff against the wall and hope that it's good. And a lot of people take the route into the game industry through QA, and it's one of those things where, well, I'm an aspiring actress, but right now I'm I'm in the wait staff here at this restaurant. When you come into a situation, make sure that you keep your focus on where you are, not where you wished you were. So if you're a programmer trying to come through QA, or you're a producer or somebody, you want to be a producer, you want to be a designer, you're coming through QA. When you get in there, make sure that your focus is on being awesome at what you're doing. And I've worked with a number of people who are just doing this until they're not, and that's really awkward, and it sets up a strange sort of strange energy. You've got a job, be awesome at the job you've got. You want a different job? Well, then go get a different job, but just make sure that you're doing your best work while you're there, and not that you're getting distracted by what it's going to be like when you're an executive producer, at insert your favorite studio here. Speaking of producers, examples for production, document, document, document. So in my studio with our producers, it's a commonly understood and known situation that when they tell me about a specific situation, that I believe them, but I want to see the supporting documentation. And so what I will actually say back to them is they will say, Dustin, this happened, and this happened. And they know I'm not being mean when I say it, but I'll come back and I'll say, okay, prove that. And that prove that statement is really, I'm requesting all of the supporting documentation that actually, whether it's notes in a meeting, or whether it's actually emails back and forth between clients or between license holders, right? I want all that documentation. If you're a producer, you can help your boss the most by documenting everything. There's a saying in astronomy that if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen, and it doesn't matter. And that is also true for production, and it's really true for all project management. But as far as I'm concerned, it's especially true for production and game production. You need to know, as a producer, about nonverbal communication. You're going to see it from your boss. You're going to see it from your teams. You need to understand what's going on and how that energy works so that you can head off trouble at the pass. Learn to play poker at a semi-pro level. You have to. If you're a producer that's coming from a non-technical background and you're not coming someone who's transitioned away from being a designer or from an engineering kind of perspective, you're going to have a lot of challenges in trying to understand and call BS when people are pushing you in one direction or another. And that's something that playing poker will actually help you with. The better you get at kind of catching when people are not necessarily giving you all the information, the more you're going to be appreciated by your lead. Okay, so wow, I talked for a long time. It's something that I do. I apologize. So in conclusion, kind of managing up is about managing a relationship. You want to learn about your boss so you can create a situation where you become a critical part of the team in a very short point in time. Learn to apologize, learn how to take the magic bullet, and most importantly, be awesome. Make sure that every time you have an opportunity to do something, it's the absolute best result that you can produce. Nothing says success like just squeezing every last ounce of juice out of everything and every opportunity that you have. So that's it. And you can reach me on Twitter here at @bclingman. And any questions or thoughts that come out of the talk and are directed my way on Twitter, I'll be happy to answer them there. And I think that probably covers everything.
All right. For joining us, and please check back for more great AltDev Student Summit sessions that will be starting very shortly. Really enjoyed having you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.